Hello, my name is Orcrist, and today I'm going to show you the MSR speedrun on Switch 1 patch 1.8.2. The goal of this category is to get the Master Sword in Korok Forest as quickly as possible, doing so by obtaining the minimum 13 heart containers. The fastest way to get 13 hearts in this game is by completing 40 shrines. The restricted part of the title refers to glitches that can circumvent this requirement, and thus they are banned in this category. The goal of this video is to explain the route I came up with for the latest patch of Breath of the Wild, which doesn't have certain glitches available to us, and to explain new strats that I've come up with to try and make this category as fast as possible. So what are the differences between new Switch versions and the old standard 1.6? One difference is load times being faster, and another is movement glitches that are either patched or just not worth going for. But we'll get more into those once we have a chance to breathe. With those matters out of the way, let's get into the run. Breath of the Wild speedruns start on a new game file, and time starts when you gain control of Link. This category is ran in English, which may seem odd if you've seen my commentated video on Any%. Other languages like French can save 5 seconds on voice acting in the opening scene, so why English? Because this route goes to a maze shrine, and English saves 8 seconds on not getting an extra text box from the monk. Technically, Russian would be fastest, but only by a small margin. First thing we do is we get the Sheikah Slate, and the reason why we get it is because it's necessary for completing the game. If you don't get the Sheikah Slate, you can't download the runes. If you don't download the runes, you can't finish the shrines. If you don't finish the shrines, you can't get the paraglider. And if you don't have the paraglider in your inventory, then you can't leave Plateau. Last time I checked, I think the Master Sword was off Plateau, so I guess we need the Sheikah Slate, huh? The first trick we do is called a scope clip. It involves using the scope function of the Sheikah Slate to force Link out of bounds. But the first thing you have to do is press the R stick once, because the first time you do so on a new file, you get this little animation. If we did that later, it would mess up the trick, so it's done now. A quick press of the Y button to cancel the scope, and we're off and running. You kind of line yourself up in this corner of the room, and then press the scope function of the Sheikah Slate, which clips you out of bounds. Then we're going to run up this hill and climb up this steep slope and try to get to this upper ledge where Link can clip back inbounds because, for whatever reason, walls in Breath of the Wild have collision on both sides. Next, we're going to be running over to a nearby Boko camp. And what we're going to do here is we're going to be stealing some supplies. At the moment, you'll see me whistle sprinting, and this is just to save stamina, but also to get the attention of the Boko so they come off their starting spot. So here you see them wandering toward me before going back to the campfire, and while they're distracted I steal these 6 peppers, and I have to do so quickly so I can steal the pot lid too. If you do this part wrong, they'll take the pot lid and the run is over. Last, I grab these 3 mushrooms. This food is going to help us survive the first quarter of the run until we can get more heart containers later. Next we're going to come over to this wall, quickly climb over, then we're going to shield surf toward this axe that's driven into this tree, and that's going to be our weapon for the first part of the run. Next we get a quick little cutscene from Zelda telling us to go to a spot marked in our Sheikah Slate, but we're going to ignore that for right now. Our first goal is to head to the Stasis Shrine, which is stop number 1 of 4 on our way to finishing the plateau. And since the best method to get there is by running, we're going to be trying to take as clean a line as possible, maybe even shield hopping over a couple of little hills to save some time, and then we're going to be heading toward this cliff. There's another Boko camp up here where it has a couple of things we want, namely some arrows and a bow, and we're going to be careful to not alert these guys too soon because if we do, then there's a chance that we may not survive. So I'm going to run around this first Boko, and I'm going to smack the other one twice to disarm him and take the bow out of midair. And then we're going to shield surf toward this other cliff, which is going to put us in prime position to get to the Stasis Shrine. And getting that little boost up the wall is also important so that we don't have to waste any time climbing slowly. And then we're going to whistle sprint some more over this direction toward the Stasis Shrine. And the way we're going to enter, as you can tell it's not glowing, is we're going to be using a skew clip. It's kind of a lot to explain, but I'm going to shield surf onto this little ledge right here, which gives you a skew angle next time you shield surf. And I'm going to be using that skew angle to clip into the side of the shrine, and then we're going to quickly stand up and then activate the shrine from the floor. So here we are at the first shrine, and before you ask, yes, you do have to download the rune, because if you don't download the rune, then the monk won't deal with you. While this rune downloads, that gives us a brief second to talk about the differences between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 versions of Breath of the Wild. The Switch 1 version and Switch 2 are basically identical, except the difference is that Switch 2 is going to load a lot faster, obviously. There's maybe a difference between about 3 to 4, 3 to 5 seconds of load difference upon loading a shrine and then loading the overworld afterward, which can add up to about 2 minutes over the course of this run. So when you add it all up together, it's probably more worth it to play on the Switch 2, but this is what I have available to me. So now that we have the stasis rune, we're going to freeze this cogwheel, and then after one ding, we're going to unfreeze it. And then we're going to use stasis again to freeze this boulder so that it doesn't roll down and kill us. And then we're going to whistle sprint our way up the hill and then toward this sledgehammer. The reason why I get a sledgehammer is because I need a little bit of weapon durability to deal with some of the tricks we do in this run, and it's just some good insurance as well. Next, I'm going to do a shield flip past this boulder to kind of like skip that little puzzle, and then we're going to complete the shrine. Back to the differences between Switch 1 and Switch 2 is that we can't do a trick called BLSS, which you've probably seen in other Breath of the Wild speedruns. The inputs and setup for BLSS work, but something has changed with the physics engine that don't allow you to fly. Also, super launches are much harder to do on these patches because lag is significantly reduced, so they aren't really worth going for any longer. Also, at 60 frames per second, wind bombs are significantly weaker and mid-air wind bombs are much harder. So doing the run at 30 FPS is more preferable to me, even though it is technically slower. So after this brief world load, we're going to have a conversation with the old man. We're going to be going to the Cryonis shrine next, and we're going to be getting there with a trick called a bullet time bounce. Now, this might seem like a nothing part of the run, but there is actually an optimal way to go through these text boxes. I'm going to be choosing the second, first, and second text options, just so that this conversation finishes as quickly as possible and saves as many frames as possible. After that, I'm going to be doing a little trick called a stasis ride, which doesn't seem very complicated, but essentially what it means is I'm going to hit the boulder in the background 4 times, and then I'm going to change its trajectory with an arrow and ride it up to the top of the cliff for the next trick. So here you hit it 4 times, then shoot as high as possible. And then as Link rides up, I'm going to be side hopping off of it just to make sure I don't get caught in the boulder. And then shield surfing over into position for the bullet time bounce. This is fairly precise, but what I want to do is stand near this ledge, and then I want to shoot an arrow toward the wall. Once I do that, I'm going to swing my weapon once, and then shield jump onto the bokoblin, and then go into bullet time, and then cancel bullet time by pressing the Y button to do a spin. But once we're up here, we need to survive the fall, so you do a trick called a fall damage cancel, starting by throwing the weapon, but then unequipping a weapon at the last second, which recalculates your height and then lets you survive the fall. And then I'm going to be doing another shield clip into the shrine, but kind of a special one, where you buffer toward the skew frame, and then re-equip the shield to do another shield jump midair, and then clip through the gate. This is called an ESC, and is necessary to clip through the front gate. Inside the Cryonis shrine, it's going to be kind of the same thing as the Stasis shrine. We're going to download a rune, and then we're going to wait for a second, and then we're going to solve the shrine as quickly as possible. While we're waiting, I want you to keep in mind that in this game, because we travel places so quickly, it is actually possible to get to some shrines before they load in properly, and maybe you might just see that in the next segment. But as we download the Cryonis rune, we're going to see a special text box that tells us how to swap runes, which, you know, is nice. We wouldn't know how to do that otherwise, right? Then I'll exploit how a cryoblock forms to maybe reach some heights you're not supposed to. I could do a faster strat to wall jump over the fence to the left, but I'll be honest, I've never done it. So first Link runs over into this area to lift up to this ledge, and then we're going to use cryo to lift the gate up over our heads. And then we're going to shield jump onto a cryoblock as it forms, and then unequip the shield to maintain the boost, and then that solves this one. And what you're going to see now as I go through these text boxes is there's going to be a little bit of hesitation before I skip the next cutscene. You probably noticed it in the first one, but maybe there wasn't enough time to talk about it. But after the monk is done talking to us here, I'm going to hesitate until the text disappears completely, and then I'm going to press the X button. What this does is it encourages the game to load the world a bit faster. Hard to say why, and harder still to say why they didn't fix this when they patched the game, but there you go. You see that the game starts loading immediately, and then we're swapping over. Next, we're going to be doing another bullet time bounce heading toward the Magnesis shrine. And what I want to do is I want to stand Link in this precise spot on this ledge, then shoot another precise spot like we did before, and then weapon swing before jumping so we don't move, then go into bullet time kind of as late as possible, and get this low angle heading this direction. We also want to struggle with our menuing because that's optimal for some reason. It's not. But sometimes the D-pad in this game is kind of tough to work with. And then we're going to do another fall damage cancel to land next to the Magnesis Shrine. And what do you know? It's unloaded. At least the outside part is, which includes the gate, and that allows us to skip trying to clip into the shrine like we did the other ones. Pretty cool, right? So now that we're in the Magnesis Shrine, we're going to do the same song and dance. We're going to go ahead and download the next rune, and we're going to think about something else to talk about. How about this? Did you know that every shrine in Breath of the Wild is named after a developer of the game? It's true, because apparently this shrine, the Omen Ao Shrine, is named after the director of the game, EJ Aonuma, which I apologize for the pronunciation. I don't speak Japanese, but every shrine in the game is some kind of abbreviated version of their name, and that's how they decided on all these kind of like weird Sims-sounding names and like different strange syllables. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use Magnesis to pull this door up and hop inside this hole and carefully not fall into the water. And then we're going to go up these stairs toward this block wall, and we're going to activate Magnesis as late as possible to both push all the blocks at the same time and not crush Link's skull. We're going to then try to not get shot by the small guardian here. I think his name is Greg, I'm not sure. And then do another shield hop over this gap before opening the door and reaching the monk to finish the shrine. And as I get to the monk, I'm going to be swapping to Stasis to do our next trick. After this, we're going to be heading to the most useful shrine on Plateau, the Bomb Shrine. You may know that the Bomb Shrine is the first shrine you go to in the other plateau route, but because BLSS is patched, it doesn't really make as much sense to get bombs as quickly as possible, and it just makes everything a lot harder. So we end up siding with this route that was made all the way back in 2019, just because it's efficient, and it's not a lot slower than the 1.6 route. It's maybe about a minute slower, but a lot of that has to do with being able to do wind bombs inside shrines, which we can't do obviously. So the next trick we're going to do is called a box walk, which we're going to use Stasis again. We're going to hit this block 4 times and then angle it up again at a 45-degree angle with an arrow. And then I'm going to cancel Stasis and then walk backwards slowly on the box to maintain our position. Then we're going to hopefully get the Bokoblin with the club and the shield to come over to us. And then we're going to carefully jump past this barrel and then go into bullet time kind of late. And this is going to send us bouncing toward the Bomb Shrine, then hopefully land within the fence and avoid the guardians in the area. So we cancel a bit late and then do a fall damage cancel to survive the fall again. And then we're going to be getting skew in sort of a similar spot to the Stasis Shrine up on this ledge, which is going to help us clip into the side of the shrine, and then back into the elevator right after. So like I said before, bombs are probably the most useful rune in the game because they allow us to do wind bombs. I'm sure you've seen this trick 1,000 times and I won't really bother explaining it a bunch because 1, we don't have time and it's been done 10,000 times before. But if you need an explanation, it's basically just a glorified damage boost. We're going to use one bomb to send the other bomb into Link and send him flying through the air. But before we do our first wind bomb, I need to explain something called ragdoll glitch. All these shield clips I've done, for some reason, mess up Link's coordinates. And when his coordinates are messed up, launching him isn't possible. And there are 3 ways to remove this. One is tripping over your shield during a shield surf, another is taking damage, and another is to simply just do another shield flip midair and unequip the shield, which I quickly do this back toward the entrance of the shrine, and then step onto this peg, and then line up with a specific spot before doing the wind bomb. You'll notice I kind of delay the detonation for a second, which sends Link lower and slower and goes all the way to the monk cage. This particular wind bomb is pretty difficult, but it saves quite a bit of time to get, so it's worth it. Now that we have all 4 shrines done, we're going to get the paraglider. The quickest way to get there is, you guessed it, with our new wind bombs, but because they send us flying through the air and we don't have the paraglider yet, we need to do them at a very low angle so that Link doesn't die from the fall damage. And the kind of wind bomb I'll be doing soon will be useful for the rest of the run. It's what we call a turn wind bomb, and it travels faster and further than a standard wind bomb. But before we get to that, the old man wants to speak to us. Something about lines and puzzles and X's, but we're going to ignore him. So after his text boxes are done, we get a glimpse into the biggest secret of the early game that, could he be a ghost? Was he dead the whole, nah, who cares? So then I'm going to side hop onto this ledge, And then we're going to line up on a specific angle again, and then delay the detonation so that Link flies lower, but also reaches the field over here to the west, and then lands near this tree. And then we're going to cut down a tree, and then again use stasis to launch it over toward the Temple of Time. So we charge it up to red, and then use the arrow to angle it upward. And then as the tree flies through the air, we're going to pick up our arrow, which the more the merrier, right? And then hop off the tree and head toward the end of the plateau. So now I think is a good time to talk about why we got that food at the beginning of the run, because as you've noticed, we haven't touched any of it. The reason is because of all these wind bombs. Each time you do a wind bomb, it does 1 heart of damage, which isn't too much of a big deal since we get healed at the end of every shrine, but there are some places where we're going to need to do multiple wind bombs in between shrines. So with all this damage stacking up, we need to be able to survive those things. And with the paraglider now in our inventory, we can now make our way through the speedrun. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to Plateau Tower. Once I gain control, I'm going to run over to the edge of this platform and set up an ordinal wind bomb to the northeast. Then quickly do the wind bomb inputs as quickly as possible so that I get as much speed as possible. And as I fly, I'm going to eat a mushroom, which is going to get us to 1.5 hearts of health so that we can do another wind bomb after we raise the tower. Then shield jump midair to start falling quickly, and then glide straight toward the terminal. The reason why we need to go here is because if you don't activate the Plateau Tower, none of the other shrines are going to be activated and can't be opened by using the terminal. And if we didn't do that, we would need to shield clip into each one of them, which, while possible, is very slow. So we're not going to be bothering with that. We're just going to sit through this brief cutscene. And while we sit through this cutscene, I think it's a good time to explain how this route is going to look. If you've seen the 1.6 version of this run, we're going to basically imitate it exactly. Now, without BLSS, it makes some movement a bit more complicated, but we have some other glitches available to us that help us bridge those gaps. The way the route works is we're first going to head east before tracing our way along some shrines into the wetlands, then making our way to Akala in the northeast. The reason why we do this is it gives us a bunch of spirit orbs, which once we warp back to the wetlands and go to Kakariko Village, we're going to be able to exchange those for some heart containers. And our first movement is going to be heading toward the Bash Kala Shrine, which normally what you would do is you would do either a high-speed wind bomb and a super launch, or you would do a BLSS. But since we can't do BLSS and we can't do super launches anymore, we need to get a wind bomb that achieves maximum speed, but also maximum distance, so that we can get to Bash Kala without wasting any additional food. So what you'll see me do is head over to this ledge on the south side of the tower, and then line up a turn wind bomb, and then delaying detonation so we get as much speed as possible. At this range, this amount of speed is good enough to get there in one go. If I were to get less speed and less distance, the strategy would be to run to Bash Kala instead of trying to make up some of that time loss by doing an additional wind bomb. And as we get there, I'm going to do a shield jump so that Link starts falling faster, and then activate the terminal. Now, this is maybe not the most exciting shrine in the game because the best way to get through it is simply by solving it casually. There is a wind bomb that you can do inside the shrine, but as we mentioned earlier, don't really have the health or the food to do it, so we just ride these air currents. From the elevator, you simply run a bit to the left to reach these stairs, then hop into the air current to get across. Then quickly manage our stamina to not fall into the pit below, and then ride to the end of the next one. So this begins the sequence of completing all the shrines that we need to do to get to the Master Sword. After this, we're going to head to the Wago Kata Shrine, which is up to the north and maybe just a bit to the east. Now, kind of an important technique with these wind bombs is adding a little bit of a turn to them. You've already seen me do that a few times, but haven't quite gotten around to explaining what they do. If you turn Link after you place the bombs, it kind of changes the collision angle of the bombs and sends him a lot faster. The other attribution to the speed is the delaying of the detonation. It just causes a more solid collision with Link. For this one, what we're going to do is hopefully get all the way to the shrine in one go, because normally you would do a super launch, but without that available to us, we need to get as much distance and conserve as much health as possible. And as we glide through the air, we're going to say a brief little hello to the ponies at the stable, which there are no ponies in this speedrun. Sorry, horse fans. And we land just a bit short, but close enough to run to the next part of the shrine. And believe it or not, this is a bit faster than landing earlier and doing a second wind bomb. Inside the Wago Kata Shrine is a pretty simple puzzle, and we will be skipping it with a wind bomb. Now, this introduces one of our scarier techniques using a ricochet technique, which basically sends Link into the wall, which for whatever reason doesn't cause damage to him, but it kind of halts his momentum mid-air and allows you to land near to your target and pull the glider. And luckily we got a pretty good bounce, which sends us right to the monk. After this, we're going to be heading to the Hilareo Shrine, which is just a bit off to the east and a little bit to the north. It's one of the more difficult shrines to do with wind bombs and difficult in general to do quickly because it has a few puzzles in our way and the ceiling is pretty low, but luckily I have a special setup to get past that. What you'll see me do next is hop over to the left to get to the edge of the shrine, which allows me to get into bullet time easier, and then turn to the right to curve the wind bomb, keep the speed high and the height low, and kind of skimming the ground as we get closer to the shrine. Now I have to be pretty careful to not touch these flowers, because if I do, Flower Blight is going to get mad at me and it's going to waste a lot of time. But luckily I just make it there and enter the shrine. Now this special technique of mine, basically it's a turn wind bomb, but I'm going to be delaying the detonation at a super extreme level, which is going to cause not only a lot of speed, but it's also going to just barely skim below the ceiling. So we turn all the way to the left, waiting until about 2/3 of the stamina is gone, and that puts us just in front of the monk in time to pull the glider and not go careening into the next wall. Our next destination is the Kayawan Shrine, and this is kind of a critical part of the run because there's a lot of resources here at the forest. And one of the biggest ones is a Decayed Guardian which has a static fairy in front of it. For whatever reason, the developers decided to put this fairy there, and it's become kind of a mainstay in a lot of Breath of the Wild speedruns because it's just so readily available from Plateau. This wind bomb going north can be a bit awkward. You need a good amount of height and speed to carry Link the whole way, and failing it can be messing up our food routing. So I'm going to line up a wind bomb going to the north, and turn slightly to the left, to get just enough speed and height to head toward this Guardian, which hasn't quite loaded in just yet, but does right as I get there, and there's our fairy. After this, I'm going to be heading into the forest and picking up 3 hardy radishes. These are going to be kind of my food source as I head through the first 20-ish shrines of this run, because as I said, we have to do a lot of wind bombs, and I don't have a lot of way of avoiding that. Down below is the Kayawan Forest, a good place to go if you need lots of radishes. The first one is just underneath this bush, the next one is over here by this large tree, and the other one is by this kind of small rock. So we're going to get those now, and then we're going to take care of those after this shrine. Heading inside the Kayawan Shrine, it's going to be solved in kind of the casual way again, which there are some tricks to kind of do this a bit faster, but this is much more efficient and honestly a bit more cool. We're going to see that cryo trick again that we saw at the beginning of the run, where you shield surf onto the cryo block. And then we're going to be taking out this kind of pesky guardian here who's guarding the next ledge. Taking him out with a headshot knocks him into the water, which apparently small guardians are water soluble, so he dies instantly. And then we're going to be heading over to this next area and trying to meet the cycle to reach this platform before it floats away. We put down that cryo block to add a little bit of insurance in case getting to this platform didn't work out, but it does, and we don't get shot out of midair, and we head over to the end of the shrine. After this, we're going to be heading to the Sheirata Shrine, which is kind of in an awkward spot to get to with the available techniques, but we're going to do our best. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be doing a little bit of cooking. Now, and this is sort of unfortunate for time, because with BLSS you really can avoid a lot of damage boosts and avoid a lot of other circumstances that let you skip getting food, but it's just what we have to work with. So I'm going to make my way over to the stable, and this time say hi to the ponies. Hi ponies! And then I'm going to be cooking all 3 of the hardy radishes. These give us 3 extra hearts on top of the 3 that we already have, which, as you can imagine with wind bombs, gives us a distinct advantage. And once we have all 3 of those cooked, we're going to go over to this fence, and we're going to be setting up the next wind bomb. First thing we do is freak out this guy by taking out our weapon, then do another turn wind bomb heading to the east, carefully gliding past these trees, and trying not to attract the attention of the riders over here. And then I'm going to stop midair and do our first midair wind bomb, which kind of works the same way as a traditional wind bomb, you're just trying to space out the bombs in a different way. As I glide over, I eat another mushroom to get to 1.5 hearts. If you do the movement this way, you have to be careful to not run out of stamina before you reach the island. If you were to drown in the water, which believe me I have done, the game takes you all the way back to the stable, which is bad, and you'll lose your ferry, which is double bad. Thankfully the midair worked and we can enter Sheirata. Sheirata is a pretty simple one. We just have to make our way over to this ledge to the right and do a simple front hop wind bomb over to the monk. Now you can get a bit lucky here if you aim just right, where you hit the side of the cage and you end up ragdolling right in front of the monk. Pretty handy. Next we're going to be heading over to Ta Mool, which is kind of a tricky shrine to get to because the terrain doesn't really allow to get there in any kind of direct path. But luckily we've kind of figured out a good way to get there at least as efficiently as possible. Alternatively, I could go to Sokofi to the east. It is, however, a test of strength, and though we can skip that challenge with ease, tests of strength are pretty slow in general, and we already do too many in this route as is. Plus, it costs 3 wind bombs to do, so that's out. So the first thing we're going to do is hop to the side of the shrine and aim our way to the northeast. This kind of wind bomb is what we call an ordinal wind bomb because it's not heading in any kind of cardinal directions, and they're a bit more risky but a bit faster too in speed. And I'm going to do another midair wind bomb to get up higher on the rocks in the distance. And this can be kind of a tricky spot to get to. Then I'm going to eat our last mushroom to survive the next wind bomb, then whistle sprint my way up to this small ledge to do a turn wind bomb over to the east. And if I get just the right amount of speed and height and distance, I can make my way all the way to the shrine, just coming up a bit short on this rock, which it's not too bad to get to, and I could actually do another wind bomb if I ate more food, but we're trying to be a bit more safe here instead of reckless. Now I don't want to scare anyone, but Ta Mool is actually the scariest shrine in all of this game. It requires multiple frame-perfect tricks and just impossible movement, so hopefully, even though this is pre-recorded, I can do it first try. First thing we gotta do is blow up these boxes, which no one could ever do first try, but I do somehow. And then we need to simply run up this ledge, which no one could also do first try, but I do. And then there you go, Ta Mool is over. Now, did I say that was the hardest shrine? I meant biggest joke. They really just didn't try with this one, did they? So after this, we're going to head to the Moakit Shrine, which is kind of up to the northeast. Now, it's not too far away to get to, but the movement can be a bit difficult. It involves kind of a tricky midair wind bomb, but if you get it right, then it can be pretty fast. Another method people use is to land early and do a turn wind bomb. They're pretty similar in speed, so it's up to preference. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk to the ledge because the mountain terrain can kind of block you sometimes if you go too far to the left. Then wind bombing over to the east, we're going to line up another ordinal wind bomb in midair. And if I get just the right timing, I can get enough height to make it to the shrine. We then fumble with our menuing inputs because menuing in this game is impossible. Then eat one of the peppers so that we can survive a third wind bomb in this segment. This shrine goes more or less just like the other ones, but we have to be a bit careful to not hit any undesirable walls, because to get to the monk cage, there's kind of a tall spire in the way that's depositing a bunch of boulders into the shrine. Normally, we would just run through that, but we want to sneak through this tiny little gap on the left side. And if we're able to pull the glider at the last second, we can then curve our way back over to the monk and finish this one. After this, we head to the Sa Dahaj shrine, which, I'm not joking this time, this is one of the worst shrines in the game because it just has such a tight wind bomb to do inside of it. It's over here to the north and not too difficult to get to, but with a pretty good angle and speed, we'll be able to get there quickly enough. But hopefully we'll be a bit lucky this time because in some runs, it just doesn't go right. As we start, we're facing to the south, which means we have to run behind the shrine over to these rocks here. And I'm going to line up pretty much due north and do a slight turn so that we get a small change in angle, but high speed and low angle. And as we glide over these rocks, I'm going to shield surf down onto the shrine to try and get there a bit faster. The shield dive carries you forward more than you'd think, and I'm able to land nearly in front of the terminal. Now it's time for Sa Dahaj, and it is, as I warned, one of the worst ones. The Sa Dahaj shrine wants to teach you how to use fire to your advantage in this game, but what we're going to do is wind bomb past all of that, which we never do, of course, and then we're going to sneak past this tiny little gap in the wall just over to the right. If we get just a right kind of angle and also don't take enough fall damage, we can survive the shrine and get all the way to the end quickly. Next, we head to the Zikasho Shrine, which is honestly another pretty difficult one because it can just kind of go wrong for random reasons. It's to the east on the map, and it's one of the last 3 shrines in this branch of the route, so hopefully we can get there pretty efficiently and not mess too much up. As we've done in other shrines before, I'm going to quickly side hop to the left, and then we're going to do a front hop Cardinal Wind Bomb to the east. And you might think that it might be better to stop and do a midair wind bomb up to the next part of the mountain, but the mountain is a bit too high to clear with one midair, and also, because we don't land too far away, the square wind bomb is still out there, so running up the hill is best. And then we do another wind bomb to get over to the next shrine, and I'm going to eat the first of 3 hearty foods. The reason why I do that here is because when you land in the monk cage outside Zikasho, there's a strong chance of taking 2 to 3 hearts of damage, and we don't want to lose our fairy just yet, so we're going to be cautious and use the hearty food. Inside this shrine are actually a bunch of really fun puzzles, which fortunately or unfortunately can be skipped with one wind bomb. So I'm going to head over to this left side, then I'm going to line up the camera with this corner, and then do a front hop wind bomb and land just in front of the monk cage. That was pretty fortunate and much smoother than normal. Now we head toward Katosa Og to the northeast, and to get there I will be showing off one of the glitches I talked about earlier to help us circumvent some of the challenges of not having BLSS anymore. This one is called a stasis bounce. It was actually found just before BLSS, and people tried to find ways to make it not only consistent, but find ways to use it, but it's kind of a situational glitch, even though it is so fast and so powerful, and this just happens to be one of those situations. So what we're going to do is use one of our cheater toys called Amiibo. I'm going to spawn some metal boxes with a Guardian Amiibo, which is useful because I can use Magnesis to pick them up and position them. And then I'm going to line it up heading to the northeast, then charge it to full with stasis. Then position myself facing left and just in contact with the box, and then do a shield hop in place, and then shield hop again just as the box releases. It's a very precise trick, and sometimes, I'll be honest, it works when I don't think it will, and it fails when I think it should, but this time it does work, and it sends us at max speeds across the map. Now, the big disadvantage to this is that it only goes in a straight line, so if I'm going to a shrine that's lower than the one I just came from, it works perfectly, but if it's going any higher, then you kind of lose its usefulness. Plus, being on flat ground is kind of optimal, and you don't really always get that everywhere in Breath of the Wild. In the Katosa Og Shrine, we're going to be doing a quick square first wind bomb, which is our first one, which gives kind of a low speed angle, and we're just going to skip this quick little golf puzzle and go to the end. If you do a normal wind bomb here, Link will probably die, so that's why this one's different. Which brings us now to the last shrine in our branch, Zunakai, which is up on a tall spiky mountain over a lake shaped like a skull. Now, even though it's pretty far away, it's routed into this because it's a blessing shrine, which means no puzzles to solve, no nothing, so it's pretty fast. Despite its long distance, there aren't many alternative shrines we could go that would be faster, aside from more tests of strength, which I already explained why those are a problem. To start, I do a turn wind bomb to the northwest, and then 2 more to get to Zunakai. My hope is that I will achieve maximum distance and speed on this one. The reasons are obvious why, but the main reason is I hope to do a mid-air wind bomb to the green hills in the distance. So here is the mid-air wind bomb, and again, I hope to get a lot of distance before I run out of stamina. With 1 more wind bomb to do, I have to eat another pepper to bring us to 1.5 hearts. And where I'm trying to go is toward those bumpy red rocks where there's lots of good spots to get bullet time. The front hop is angled a bit to the north and goes pretty fast. And here you see I get enough height to go over the spire, which is exactly what we want out of this movement. So as you probably saw from my inventory, I have quite a bit of food left, and in just a moment we're going to trade in our spirit orbs for heart containers. The reason why we get this amount of food is mostly just to be safe, and because this is a commentated run and everything is going perfectly, you're seeing how things could work out in their ideal form, but typically you don't get this far with this much food left over. So here's the blessing shrine, you just have to run up the stairs and go to the end. You may have noticed that there's a chest in each of these blessing shrines. This one in particular has a flame blade in it, which is one of my personal favorite weapons, but unfortunately it's not very useful for this run. Other chests we'll see have the rubber armor or barbarian armor sets in them, and while they might provide some extra protection for parts of the run, they just aren't worth the time to get. So that takes care of the first branch, and the next branch we do is going to take us all the way to the end of the run. We're going to be warping all the way back to the Kayawan Shrine, which we left about 10 minutes ago. From there, the route goes to Kakariko Village, as I've mentioned several times now. Then it bends to Dueling Peaks, does a special wrong warp trick that I'll explain when we get there, then down to Farron before bending all the way back north through Hyrule Field, and then towards Hebra. And this is one of the more unfortunate spots that we really miss not having super launches. Normally, what we would do in a 1.6 run is either set up a BLSS that lets you go all the way to the Daka Tusk Shrine, or you would do one wind bomb and do a super launch generating lag off the forest. But it's not very easy to do in these patches and would just kind of waste time, so we'll just get there as best we can. Now we'll do a turn wind bomb to the east and a bit to the south. And we happen to get an abnormal amount of speed and distance out of this first wind bomb, which is pretty nice. Normally I would land around these ruins below to set up the next wind bomb, and I'm not sure, but it could be faster in general to land early for the next launch, since each launch degrades in speed over time. So I'm going to stop here and put down a cryo block to get bullet time, and then do one more wind bomb to finish it off. And now we're going to eat our second hearty food, which is going to help us survive this next trick, because unlike most other shrines, you can't just solve it with a one wind bomb, you have to do a little bit of work first. What we're going to do is abuse the function of ragdolling and send Link careening through the water into a hidden room. The shield hop in place maximizes the distance you travel when you ragdoll, not sure why, but it does, so we end up in this area afterward. But oh no, we're stuck in a room full of water. But that's okay, there's a little ledge to stand on in the back, and there happens to be a gap in the adjoining wall that leads to the monk. Makes you think that maybe this is the intended strat, huh? No, it doesn't. If wind bombing isn't your style, there is a cool strat where you use a bomb to launch an orb into the slot instead of using the metal scoop, but the orb rolling around and the cutscene of gates opening is pretty slow, so we'll just stick with this one. Assuming that everything has gone according to plan with food and the ferry, that's the last actually scary shrine. First, we're going to head toward Kakariko Village, which this is where we're going to upgrade our heart containers so that we don't have to rely so much on food. The way that we get there would normally be using wind bombs that go up the mountains and then using a midair to get to the end. I exit this shrine holding the ZL button so that I don't target the Lizalfos so that I can do a side hop to the right. We then do a wind bomb to the south so that I can get to the top of this mountain, and then do an ordinal wind bomb to the southeast to get closer to the village. We then have to be careful about our health here and eat one more pepper to survive the midair. This midair can be a bit nerve-wracking. As you may have noticed, I've gained a lot of altitude with these two wind bombs, and if I fail this midair, then I don't really have a backup. Fortunately, I have a lot of experience with this one, and we're able to reach the goddess statue in the center of Kakariko Village. And now we have about a minute or so of turning in spirit orbs. So what are we going to talk about? Well, if you're very into Breath of the Wild speedruns, you might have seen a glitch called inventory slot transfer. And with this glitch, you can use it for lots of things, but people typically use it to get a lot of fairies. So you might be asking, well, why don't you use it in Master Sword Restricted if it would just help you circumvent all these food requirements? Well, the simple reason for that is because it just wastes too much time to gather all the resources that you need and perform the glitch. So it might save time over a longer period, but because this run is so short, we're not going to worry about doing any extraneous glitches. But what we are going to do next is talk about how we're going to skip this following shrine. It's a tutorial shrine, and if we're stuck learning all the basics of the game, we're going to waste a lot of time. So there's got to be a way to skip this, right? Right, there is. And the way you do that is by simply avoiding the trigger that starts the tutorial. Now, for some reason, the developers built this game to have very short cutscene triggers in Tests of Strength and in this tutorial shrine. It's kind of a wall that goes from one side of the shrine to another, but it has a gap at the top. So we're just going to blast our way over it. To get up to the shrine, you do a simple front hop wind bomb to the north, and quickly cancel the launch so you don't fly too far. Now, even though the principles of this cutscene skip are the same as a Test of Strength, Talo Neg is very different. There's no enclosed arena, which makes skipping the tutorial a bit easier if you do so from the entrance, but we won't be doing that. There's something inside that's going to make life much easier for us throughout the run, but it makes the skip much tighter. First thing I do, I'm going to open this chest to get the Shield of Mind's Eye. This is one of the better shields in the game because it has what we call slick properties and allows you to shield surf a lot faster over any surface. There's our quick wind bomb, and it sends us just over the wall to the other side without triggering the cutscene. Then we're going to be setting up skew so that we can shield clip through the walls, which we do by shield surfing onto this little ledge. And then just like other parts in the game, walls have collision on both sides, so we need to do 2 shield clips. And then we need to remove Ragdoll, and we do so by blowing ourselves up, which is another handy part about having this many heart containers. We have enough health to survive the blast. After this, we're going to be heading to the Ha Dahamar Shrine, which is kind of far to the south and over the mountains. It's one of the trickier overworld movements that we do, and it doesn't usually go very well for me. And that's because Ha Dahamar is really far away, and traveling fast in cardinal directions is difficult because of how the square bomb works. It always spawns with the flat sides facing north, south, east, and west, and when those flat sides collide with Link, it usually produces a weaker and more vertical launch. First, we're going to hop over to the left, and we're going to do a wind bomb to the south. And normally you would generate lag here to do a super launch to get to the next spot, but not available to us, so we just do another midair. This puts us next to this small mountain, and we're going to do a quick little turn wind bomb, delaying as much as possible to get as much speed as possible. And if we do it just right, we're going to head all the way to the Ha Dahamar Shrine. The other option would be to stop somewhere, either midair or on the ground, and do another wind bomb, but luckily we got just enough speed. We do another shield surf to get down toward the shrine, and then quickly activate the terminal. And this is without a doubt one of the scariest shrines, and it's the reason why we got a fairy in the first place. There's a lot of randomness to the wind bombs we'll do inside this one, and yes, you can achieve consistent results by simply executing the same way each time, but I'm not a robot, I think. So we'll just hope RNG is on our side today. We're going to be doing a ricochet wind bomb to go off the wall to kind of this unreachable texture, carving, whatever you want to call it, this thing on the wall. And then we're going to try to line up a wind bomb that goes over a tiny gap in the ceiling. And the reason why we have a fairy is if you don't do this wind bomb correctly and somehow aren't able to pull the glider, you would survive, but we're able to do it no problem. Really can't say enough bad things about this shrine. Not my favorite. After this, we're going to head to Toto Sa, which is off to the south. It's hidden behind a rock wall and in a cave, and it can be kind of tricky to find in a casual playthrough, but luckily we know where we're going. I think. Yeah, we do. So first I do a turn wind bomb heading to the south and a bit to the east, and normally you would do a super launch that would go all the way to the cave, but we need to stop here to do a midair wind bomb, and that's not really my preference. If I have to do a second wind bomb to reach an area lower than Link, I'd prefer it to be from the ground, but there's no good spots for it here. And then I'm going to quickly swap over to the hammer so that we can break the wall, because otherwise you'd need to use bombs, and it's one of the reasons why we got the hammer in the first place. And hiding behind the wall is the shrine. Toto Sa is definitely one of the smoother shrines in the run, which is a nice break after having to do Ha Dahamar. If you're new to Breath of the Wild speedrunning and want to try some of these wind bombs, this one is pretty easy to do for a beginner, and satisfying as well. You simply have to hop onto the peg to the right of Link, and aim a bit to the right next to this archway, and do a quick wind bomb that sends you all the way to the end. There's some other pretty cool casual tricks you can do in here, but this one feels pretty nice. After this, we're heading to Ridahi, which is going to be yet another instance of overworld movement where we really miss super launches, but if done right, we can make it pretty fast. Ridahi is also a candidate for worst shrine in the game because it has such a low ceiling, and the casual way to solve it is so slow. And also, missing BLSS is a pretty big deal for this one, so hopefully we can show off the correct way to do it. Once we leave this cave, I'm going to make a cryo block just outside. And then we're going to use this cryo block to move back where we came, but kind of stopping short at this bridge that has a tower on it. This turn wind bomb to the north should, in ideal cases, send you about halfway to the shrine. Sometimes the turn can send you a bit too far to the west and you end up clipping the mountain, or you get a weird launch that barely goes anywhere, but if you get enough height and speed, you can make it to this tower, but it's not typically what happens. You end up doing a midair or landing a bit lower. And then another turn wind bomb heads us toward the shrine and gets there pretty quickly. I'm kind of pleased I got a segment this good for the video. Maybe if you're really consistent at this game, you can get Ridahi to go well each time, but it feels like one of those segments that always has it out for you. Now inside the Ridahi shrine, like I said, we need to do kind of a special wind bomb. Instead of turning, what I'm going to try to do is detonate the wind bombs at the same timing as a turn wind bomb to give us the same amount of height, but to not have an angle change at all. So here we wait until about a third of the stamina is gone, and the wind bomb is just low enough to not clip the ceiling and send us all the way to the end. That's definitely one we're happy to be done with. Now, very quickly, I need to try to describe a very special glitch in this game. It's called a shrine coordinate warp. What does that mean? It's basically a way to wrong warp into shrines. Typically, it's done to skip shrine quests and enter underground shrines, but what we're going to do is use it to warp our way all the way to the top of the dueling peaks. What you do is you store the activation of a shrine elevator and escape being pulled into that shrine, then simply let the cutscene play once you're close enough to another shrine. What you're going to do is see me do a side hop onto the wall of the shrine, and then activate the elevator just before landing on the ground, and then shield flip out of the elevator, and then use the slick shield to hop off the ground before touching it, because if I do touch the floor of the shrine, I'm going to be pulled back into it. But because I've activated the elevator, the game wants to pull me back in. But because I moved over away from the shrine into the horizontal coordinates of the shrine above, it just warps me up into the one there instead of the one I just came from. It's a pretty cool glitch, and I have some videos on it if you want to see those, but that's a pretty cool way to get to the top of the mountain without going the conventional way. Now, before I could even finish describing it, we're done with Shivanath. Now we're going to head to Shivanir, which is a mirror image of Shivanath, and we're going to solve it in the exact same way. Now, because we're all the way to the top of the mountain, there's no need to do more shrine coordinate warps. We're just going to wind bomb our way over. There's a couple ways to do this movement. One is to awkwardly climb to the top of the shrine and try to get close enough to Shivanir in one wind bomb plus a bit of climbing and running. The one I'm going to do is faster and less awkward in my opinion. First I do one wind bomb heading to the east, and then do a mid-air wind bomb heading back to the west. And it could possibly be better to go to Shivanir first instead of Shivanath because Shivanath is lower, but the reason I go here first is because we're going to do another stasis bounce right after. If I went to Shivanath second, I would have to find a suitable spot to do the stasis bounce, which requires flat ground to be consistent. And the only place you can get to from Shivanath that would work for stasis bounce is rocky and uneven, so we go here first to make up the time later. So like Shivanath, simply hop onto the peg and then do a front hop wind bomb to the monk. Pretty simple, and with the amount of health that we have, we don't need to worry about taking too much damage. So next, we're going to be heading to Shota Saw, which is pretty far to the southeast and pretty difficult to get there with just wind bombs. There was a time where you could get there with a super launch, and it would be a bit more efficient, but not for us. And BLSS would be far more efficient, but again, not for us. If you've seen 1.6 runs, you might be asking why I don't go to Kukanata first. I'll get to that in just a bit, trust me. Perhaps the reordering of things here could save a marginal amount of time, but this order of shrines is my preference. So what I'm going to do is use another Guardian amiibo. We're going to spawn some boxes to the right side of the shrine, which is the best place to put them, and then we're going to line up the stasis bounce heading toward the southeast, making sure to line it up perfectly because once you get flying, you can't really curve your direction too much. So again, we load up the box to full stasis, get facing to the left, then wait for the 5th fast ding to do a shield jump in place, and then another shield jump on the ground, and the box sends us flying over towards Shota Saw. And this one's hiding just behind a waterfall down below us. We're going to quickly try to cancel off the shield, then glide carefully past the waterfall and end up just in front of the shrine. This trick saves about 10, maybe 15 seconds over doing it the other way with wind bombs, and it's much cooler in my opinion. So inside Shota Saw is something we actually need for the rest of the run. There is a chest of ice arrows inside, which we need to do a bullet time bounce in about 10 minutes. The way we get there is by taking advantage of the mechanics of the shrine puzzle. The way we reach the chest is by dropping a bomb behind us, then hitting the switch to activate the launcher, which sends us over here, then use the sledgehammer to break the chest instead of opening it the normal way. And then we do a tricky little wind bomb to get to the monk, which this can kind of get away from you quickly and send you flying into the water to the left or the right, but luckily we hit the monk cage and we end up at the end. Now we head over to Kukanata, which is up on a mountain to the south and covered by a mound of dirt. In the 1.6 runs, it's more advantageous to go to Kukanata first because you can get there before the mound of dirt loads. And I haven't really tested it extensively, but I think in the current patches it's not possible at all to do this anymore. I've gotten there with stasis bounces before, and the mound is already there before you even get there, so this is why we do it in this order. I have to kind of be careful in this region when I do wind bombs. All of these trees and water create more lag, and the presence of more lag can interrupt the collision of bombs with Link, and we don't want that. First I'm going to wind bomb to the south and go up this mountain, hopefully clearing the tree and the ledge, and then we're going to do another one facing to the east and a bit to the right of east because we want to get back toward the mound. And then we're going to be doing a shield clip to get through the mound instead of the casual way of getting lightning. We set skew on this side of the mountain, and then clip through this side of this kind of tan texture. And then we quickly blow ourselves up again to remove Ragdoll, and then head into the Blessing Shrine. You definitely want to do things this way instead of waiting for a lightning strike. There's no guarantee you can get targeted quickly, and you're bound to waste lots of time. If it is true that you can't skip the dirt mound in this patch, it is kind of unfortunate, but at least there's some quick alternatives. As we did earlier, we just walk up the stairs and avoid this chest because we don't need any rubber tights, and we finish off the shrine. Next, we're going to head over to Shai Yuto, which is over behind a stable, kind of over to the southwest. And it's kind of a tricky place to get to because there's not really any clean wind bombs to get there, but if you're lucky, you can get a direct launch. Fun fact, even though we entered this shrine through the front door and activated the terminal, the dirt mound prevents the shrine from appearing on the map. Just sort of a funny little detail. Now, since we just clipped into the dirt pile, that doesn't mean that it's going to be gone, which means we have to clip back out of the dirt pile. Luckily, there's a spot just in front of us that we can kind of wedge ourselves into, and if you crouch and then stand up, you can just clip back through. Kind of like the same way we did at the start of the run to get out of the Shrine of Resurrection. Now we're going to do an ordinal wind bomb going to the southwest, which I got just enough speed and angle on to make it kind of efficient. Usually I end up kind of a bit off to the side and have to do a backup midair, but this one went pretty well. And then we land just over here in front of this rock wall, which loads right in our faces, which is pretty rude, honestly, but oh well. And then we head into this puzzle shrine. Shai Yuto is a pretty simple one, just like the others. You can get there from the start of the shrine and go directly to the monk. We have to be careful to wind bomb from the left peg though, because there's a kind of torch in the way on the right side. We also have to be careful to not swing the weapon because for whatever reason, Link wants to hit those torches and it'll change his angle, so you have to kind of do it freehand. The launch sends Link to this upper ledge, then we wait for him to stop writhing around in pain, big baby. Then all that's left is to drop down to the monk. And if you don't like the wind bomb, you can also use stasis to freeze these seesaws and run and shield jump across them. Maybe a bit more fun to do, though harder without speed up food, but certainly a lot slower. After this, we head to the Ko Maka Shrine, which is pretty far to the west and doesn't really have very convenient movement, and especially without super launches you can't really get as much speed as you normally would be able to. I think it's even possible to get there with one super launch, but I might be misremembering that. Either way, what we're going to do after we exit the cave is we're going to climb up to the top of this palm tree, which is going to give us enough height to get over the mountains to the west. We also, for some reason, scared the crap out of a beetle, which of course we're sorry about and would never tell Beetle about. We do a quick wind bomb going to the west, and then we line ourselves up to do a turn wind bomb midair, which can be kind of tricky and go wrong, but if you get the right timing, you can get enough speed to reach these ledges over to the right. And on this particular one, I got a lot more speed and distance than I would normally, which gives us a direct line to do another turn wind bomb heading toward the stable and the Ko Maka Shrine. You can really land anywhere on these cliffs for this wind bomb. It isn't terribly specific. I just need to be sure I don't delay the detonation too much or I might not have enough height to get there. This shrine is also beside a stable, so we might as well say hi to the ponies again. Hi, ponies. So even though this movement went well, 3 long-distance wind bombs doesn't seem terribly efficient, does it? While I'm not a huge fan of traveling this far to get to one shrine, Ko Maka does connect well with the rest of the route. Much like Shai Yuto, you can solve it from the start. We're just going to do a simple wind bomb from the start of the shrine all the way to the end, skipping a lot of kind of fun puzzles. They didn't really do any thinking ahead about making these places unreachable, did they? I wonder if they solved that in Tears of the Kingdom. Either way, we end up at the end of the Ko Maka Shrine, ready to head our way to Pumagnite. This is going to be our first actual test of strength shrine, and even though it looks more complicated, it's much easier than the one above Kakariko. That one tends to go wrong more often than not, but if you're well practiced in Breath of the Wild speedrunning, there should be no reason to fail Test of Strength skip. Emphasis on should, mind you. As we've done before, I'm going to do a turn wind bomb with a very slight turn to the right, and try to get as much horizontal speed as possible. If things go poorly, you'd have to do another midair wind bomb, which would be kind of unfortunate given that Pumagnite is pretty close, but the positioning of the shrine directly due north makes this a bit more complicated than it should be. A simple shield dive to the shrine, and we're in. I want to call your attention back to what I said about the cutscene trigger and these shrines. It's like an invisible wall, but there is a sizable gap above you can sneak over. The strategy for skipping tests of strength in this game is pretty simple. What we're going to do is we're going to run to the outside of the enclosure of the shrine, and we're going to put down a square wind bomb just outside of it. I'm then going to run around the gate and then line myself up parallel with the bomb, and then we're going to do a backflip midair and pull the bow to go into bullet time, and then spawn the bomb behind me, and then use the square bomb to blow it up into me, which gives kind of a weaker launch and a lower one. We then use the wall to set up the skew, and then do 2 shield clips like before. Then we have just enough health to remove Ragdoll Glitch by intentionally doing damage to Link. Next in our travels, we're going to be heading to Ya Naga, which is actually pretty far away, but believe it or not, this is the most efficient way to get there, even despite not having the advantages of super launches. If we could alternatively do a BLSS all the way to Ya Naga, you would need to find a spot that works. Right now we're in a sort of shallow valley, so you would need to find a spot that's not only high enough to clear the hills, but fast enough to justify getting to. Another thing that I'm going to do here, which is completely optional, but maybe just efficient for the purposes of a speedrun, is to grab this radish over here. It's close by, easy to get to, so not a big deal. Then we're going to do a turn wind bomb going to the west, landing somewhere around these 2 Boulder Golf Korok puzzles. Don't be too tempted to solve them now, that would be slow, silly. And we land on the far side of this hill. Then we're going to do another turn wind bomb heading to the west, to complete the movement heading toward Ya Naga. This one travels between this hill and the Bridge of Hylia, and the shrine is just over there in that large island. And this is a shrine that really could be a lot more efficient if it were possible to get bomb arrows, or if for some reason bomb arrows were included in the route. But instead we have to do kind of an annoying trick to solve this one, because unlike others, it's not quite as simple as doing just one wind bomb. The way this shrine works is they want you to use a sort of elevator to blow up rocks in the ceiling, then make your way up through there yourself. But there happens to be 1 block missing when you enter, then we're going to abuse that to enter the quick way. So what I'm going to do is throw a bomb into this slot, 2 points, and I'm going to run onto the block and detonate at the same time, which pushes you smoothly through the opening in the ceiling and lets you finish by running all the way to the monk. Not too bad. After this, we're going to be going to Geno, and the way we're going to get there is with another bullet time bounce, which we haven't seen since the beginning of the run, and you probably forgot all about them. And what I didn't talk about at that time is the only reason those work on Plateau is because you're doing them off of red bokoblins, which will ragdoll the moment that you land on top of them. That's not really the case with stronger enemies. So in order to make an enemy ragdoll, we need to freeze them first. This is probably the hardest trick in the run. I wonder how it will go. So I'm going to hop over to the north and then switch to ice arrows, which I picked up just a couple shrines ago. And then I'm going to carefully track this Lizalfos hopping in the water and freeze his buddy first. If you don't freeze the other one, he'll just make life harder. And as he's coming back toward me, I'm going to get in a position where he'll notice me, and then freeze him as he notices me so that his posture is neutral. And I'm going to shield jump onto the middle of his back, and then hopefully go all the way to Ya Naga. And if I unequip the bow on the first frame of collision, I get maximum speed and height, and I got just the perfect angle to head over the mountains. If our passengers look to the right side of the aircraft, you'll see where the speedrun started. You remember that, right? And with a few quick pumps of the glider, we make it all the way to Geno in 1 launch, which is pretty smooth if you ask me. And if you're wondering who came up with that setup to do that BTB, me. It was me. Good job, me. Now inside Geno, it's the same old story, and funnily enough, this used to be one of the more complicated shrines to do without wind bombs, because it just doesn't really have any other ways to solve it. So it's kind of funny that it's now one of the easiest. Just like Keomaka, we do 1 wind bomb and laugh in the face of all those intricate puzzles and take that best segment gold. After this, we're heading to Da Kaso, which is up to the north and below some wooden bridges, and is guarded by a very, very scary Hinox, and we're going to do our best to not wake him up this time. One trick I used to do here, which sadly no one will ever likely do again, is attempt to get a super launch by using the VR function of the game. It renders the game twice and used to be a funky way to generate lag. Now all that would be is superfluous menuing. Truly sad times for Breath of the Wild dinosaurs like me. To get to Da Kaso, we're going to hop to the right and we're going to do a turn wind bomb heading to the north, facing a bit more to the east. We're going to go over the top of the mountain and hopefully get enough distance to at least reach the bridges. If you land a bit short, it's not a big deal because you need to do a second wind bomb anyway. And there are some circumstances where you can get a wind bomb so strong that it goes all the way to the end, but that's a bit of an aberration. And there's our sleeping Hinox friend. No one make a sound or you'll wake him up. Link. Shut up, Link. Da Caso, being the closest shrine to Plateau, was probably people's first test of strength. I know it was mine. This one works just like Pu Magnete. We're going to put a square wind bomb on the outside of the cage, and then we're going to use its positioning to blast our way over the cutscene trigger. Now, and since I wasn't able to talk about it much before, the way that this setup to get skew works is you have Link go up the wall slightly, and then side hop and weapon swing to the left. And if you time the shield hop perfectly, you end up getting skew on the corner of that ledge there, which allows us to set up these next two skew clips. And yet again, we have just enough health to survive this bomb blast and remove Ragdoll glitch, and then we're heading our way over to Rota U. Now to get to Rota U is a bit tricky, because over to the north there are a bunch of tall mountains, and we're also very low to the ground right now, probably one of the lower points on the map. We also have to avoid the bridges and the terrain, so what we're going to do first, instead of heading directly north, is we're going to head a bit to the west first. And this seems like it could be slower than taking a direct path, but it's actually pretty fast in reality. As I gain control, a thing I like to do when the direction I'm heading is opposite where the camera is facing is do a little hop and tap ZL to flip the camera. I find that easier than just using the L stick. So this wind bomb sends us all the way to this ledge over to the left, and you have to watch how Link is facing when he pulls the glider. If he's turned the wrong way, he may not grab the cliff like he's supposed to. And then we do a turn wind bomb going over to the east. And if we get the right angle, we should have enough height to do a mid-air wind bomb, which will send us all the way to Rota U. And inside the Rota U shrine, there are a couple of different ways you could solve this one, but the best way to get there is by wind bombing over the cage. The other way, which I do if I'm worried about health, is throw a bomb in the basket, then rotate the puzzle while Link is standing on it, which puts him on top of the mechanism, then rotate it back with an arrow while walking left so he stays on top. Very cool, but slow, sadly. First we need to hop to the left and then turn Link all the way to the left. And it's kind of a tricky timing because the cage is actually kind of tall. Even though we didn't take damage here, if we did take any damage, it would be more than enough to survive. And this brings us to one of the worst sets of overworld movement in the game, Kamya Tak. It's really hard to say why this is so bad, but everyone would kind of agree that Kamya Tak is just not their favorite shrine to get to with wind bombs. So much so that a lot of people use BLSS in the 1.6 runs. And now that I think about it, it may have something to do with the stable below and all the lag being generated by NPCs. It's really hard to tell, but that's my best guess. But what we're going to do is a standard wind bomb in an ordinal direction. I'm slightly paranoid that the textures of this shrine make this wind bomb fail, but I have no evidence to support that. I also try to do the inputs as quickly as possible so that the direction I travel is straight and has as much speed as I can generate. This one seems to go pretty well as it reaches the bridge to the Colosseum. Next is a mid-air wind bomb in that same ordinal direction, which also happens to go pretty smoothly. So after 2 wind bombs, we end up at the Kamya Tak shrine, and we're going to again shield surf down here, which an added benefit of doing that, when you shield surf after having skew, it will remove that skew if you complete the shield jump, and that will set us up for doing another test of strength in just a moment. Now, skipping Kamya Tak this way is kind of unfortunate because it is one of the coolest shrines in the game, but we were able to skip it by doing 1 turn wind bomb over to the right, and sends us all the way to the monk and completes things very quickly. Maybe not the absolute fastest this movement can be, but we'll take that all day. The next place we go is Katachuki, and Katachuki is going to be our last test of strength in the run. And it's kind of complicated to get to because 1, it's very far away and requires 3 wind bombs to get to, and also there are a bunch of guardians in our path and we're going to try our best to not get shot by any of them, because despite our high level of health right now, we don't want to take any more damage than we need to. First, I'm going to hop to the left and then turn the camera around quickly with ZL, and then do a cardinal wind bomb to the north, sending us over the mountain. And then I'm going to land a little bit short so that I can do a turn wind bomb heading to the north and east, landing near all these decayed guardians. They shouldn't give us too much trouble as long as we make sure to get out of here quickly. And over on the distant hill, a guardian is going to appear that's going to be able to see us the moment that it spawns in. So you can hear the all too familiar tune kicking in right now, but if we land quickly and do the next wind bomb without hesitation, it shouldn't be able to get us. And even so, the blast comes just that close to hitting us. Pretty scary part, but it normally goes just fine. Katachuki sits nestled here among piles of rock and dirt. Perhaps it was the first shrine discovered by Zelda and the Sheikah 100 years ago. or maybe the royal family are just really bad at landscaping. Once again, in a test of strength, we're going to be using our tried and true cutscene skip to pass over the cutscene trigger, and using a shield clip to get through 2 layers. And I should mention that it is possible to get through the gate on the other side by just using an ESC or extended shield clip, but I find this to be a lot simpler and a lot more consistent. Maybe that's just because I'm not very good at extended shield clips, but this is probably just the preferred way no matter what. And another thing you have to be very careful in this section is to not land on your shield inside the pillar that we clip into, because if you do, you'll be stuck there. And also because I did 3 wind bombs to get here and 1 inside the shrine, I wouldn't be able to survive blowing myself up with a bomb this time, so I removed Ragdoll Glitch by shield surfing and then unequipping the shield in the middle of the animation to send Link falling over. Now we head over to Zalta, which now we're getting into the end game of the run. After 3 more shrines, we will enter the Hebra region to finish off the run. There is another shrine nearby that we could incorporate into the route. It's called Noya Niha, and it's another minor test of strength. It's not slow exactly, but it happens to be slower than doing some other shrines in the route, but like barely. Once you get past this point on pace, it's kind of guaranteed that you might PB, but there's still some tricky things to watch out for in this part. First, I'm going to be doing a turn wind bomb going to the west, and because we don't have the use of super launches, we can't get there in one go. So I'm going to be landing a little bit short on the bridge in the distance, which luckily for me, we're not in master mode and I'm not going to be shot by bokoblins wielding bomb arrows. Yeah, like that. One more turn wind bomb, and I'm going to delay pulling the glider slightly so that when I do, I can glide underneath this rock outcropping. Otherwise, you end up hitting the rock or walking on top of it, which you can imagine is not very fast. And another advantage to having so much health in this category is that when I do the Zalta shrine, I don't really have to be worried about fall damage. There are some categories where you do have to worry about that kind of thing, which means approaching this shrine differently. So what we're going to do is do a very quick wind bomb, because if I don't, I'm going to clip the side of the monk tower and go all the way to the right, and then we land right in front of the monk cage and end it just like that. After this, we head to Moniatoma, which is maybe some of the more complicated movement in the run, because it involves doing 4, 5, 500 wind bombs, I'm not sure, but it's definitely one of the more satisfying movements to pull off. It sits just to the north on some kind of higher terrain past some tall hills, and to get there we need to be pretty precise. There is a BTB you can do to head to Moniatoma, but it's perhaps only a bit faster and is definitely harder than just chaining wind bombs. Maybe that's not true if you're really bad at wind bombs. I'm not your mother. So I'm going to go over to the right first, and then do a wind bomb to the west, hopefully not clipping the mountain over my head and ruining everything. Then land on this bumpy cliff in a spot where you can get bullet time. Do a front hop wind bomb to the north over these higher rocks, which are blocking our way forward. And then landing again just as the cooldown on the bomb recharges to do another turn wind bomb going to the north and to the east. And then we're trying to land on this small little ridge of hills over in front of us to do another turn wind bomb going to the north and the west this time. A backup midair wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but you can get there easily as long as you do the launch correctly. And we do manage to get that height, curving just around the hills protecting Moniatoma from view, and land right in front of the terminal. Moniatoma does feature a pretty interesting trick where you pick up the spirit orb and then use a weapon swing to knock it into its slot over the wall. It causes a cutscene that's pretty slow, so we just go with the trusty old wind bomb to reach the end. Unlike some other shrines, we have to run into position first. Ugh, so annoying. The spot is over here next to this launcher, and you simply aim a bit to the left and land in this little cubby hole to avoid taking too much damage. With this amount of health, there's not too much risk of dying, but it's something to be aware of. Next, we're heading over to Magna Ra, which sits over to the west and is hidden behind a rock wall in the mountain face. It's also a blessing shrine and one of the quickest shrines in the run, and it's hard to say why it's a blessing in the first place because there's nothing really to it, but it's definitely fast for our purposes. As a small aside, there is a fail case for wind bombs we haven't seen yet. Sometimes when you do a wind bomb, the game decides you are going too fast and stops you immediately. We call it lag stop, and it can sometimes happen on this one. It won't happen now, but just wanted to complain for a sec. So we do a quick turn wind bomb going to the west, delaying detonation so we get a high speed and low angle. If you don't get a fast launch, you're kind of stuck having to do a slow midair towards the cliffs, which, no. But anyway, the shrine is hidden over here in a small cave. And then I'm going to use the sledgehammer to break through this wall instead of a bomb, because while the bomb does work, it is a bit risky. And back to this being a blessing shrine, you kind of guess that maybe they mixed up which ones they wanted to put here. Maybe they meant to put a puzzle shrine here. It's really hard to say. But I can think of one shrine they could trade for this one. There's a quest where you take pictures of fragments of what is apparently the Mirror of Twilight, and that one has an annoying shrine puzzle inside. Why not put it here? It would make sense. That being the last blessing shrine and the last 4 being a bit tricky, we really have to lock in if we want to make sure we have a solid speedrun. Rin Oya is next, and it's up on top of the snowfields and kind of difficult to get to. There's a couple methods to get there, and we're going to be taking the wind bomb method instead of the BTB method. BTBs are always harder in general, and while getting one that sends you directly towards Rin Oya is faster, it's also less consistent than the wind bombs in my opinion, so I'll showcase what I do. Once we leave Magna Ra, we need to go to the opening of the cave and start setting up a chain of wind bombs heading north. The first one is a front hop wind bomb, and the following 2 will be mid-airs. Which what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel my glide just before the cooldown of the bomb ends so that I can save a bit of time. And I'm going to do a second one because we also want to conserve stamina as well. And if you don't conserve stamina this way, it's going to be tough to reach this ledge in 3 wind bombs. And we have to wait a moment for the stamina to recharge, and then we do a turn wind bomb heading north into the east, and that should take us all the way to the Rin Oya shrine. And there is a bit of danger here of taking cold damage and taking more than we need to, but the speed of these wind bombs allows us to make it just in time. And if you get here with 1.5 or 2 hearts, that should be enough, but at least we have the radish and the fairy for emergencies. Inside of Rin Oya, there is a risk of dying, and since we still have our fairy, we wouldn't be too worried about that, but I've developed a wind bomb that is going to guarantee that we don't have that problem. What you want to do first is incorporate the method that we used inside of Re to He, which is getting up on top of this peg, and then delaying the detonation for a moment so that we get a lower angle, and even if I am not able to pull the glider, I don't take too much fall damage, and I'm able to survive and run to the end. In the worst of circumstances, you get there with only 2 hearts, and then you take that last bit of damage, but we can not only avoid dying, which would waste time, but menuing to eat food, which would also waste time. Next is one of the more inconvenient bits of movement, and one of the places that we miss BLSS the most. Sha Gemma sits at relatively the same altitude as Rin Oya, but it's all the way across the snowfield, and protected by a couple of Lionels. Hopefully we can get there in a couple of wind bombs and not waste a bunch of time or stamina trying to get there. The first turn wind bomb goes to the north and to the west, and sends us all the way to these trees and these rocks. This is a pretty convenient spot to set up the next wind bomb. Ideally, I would get enough speed to go all the way to the small rocks over there. If you have to shield surf a bit here, it's not the end of the world. We have enough speed to continue our momentum, but you can imagine how much faster BLSS moves across this area. The next turn wind bomb is kind of critical, because not only do we need a lot of speed, but you'll notice that we're also starting to lose a lot of stamina. And if I tried to do an extra wind bomb here, I may not make it all the way there. So instead of going for another wind bomb that's going to save a small amount of time, I opt for going for a shield surf on the slick shield, which you can maintain its horizontal speed without having to do anything. And that's how we reach the terminal. Sha Gemma is a unique shrine, or it used to be a unique shrine in the route. We had to solve a puzzle to reach the small key and open the locked door, but now there's a fairly simple wind bomb that goes over the very tall cage surrounding the monk. What you do is walk backwards this time and hop over the elevator. Then you line yourself up with the peg and hop on. Then you do a simple maximum height wind bomb and land in this little cubby hole. You can slip off the left edge and take fall damage, but it's sort of rare. And now we come to their second last shrine inside the Kazutoki maze, which is the very reason we're running in English in the first place. It sits over to the east and would involve you solving a maze to reach the end. But luckily, that solution always stays the same, and we can simply glide in from the top. Sure, it would suck if they decided to, I don't know, put a roof over the maze so you couldn't just solve it the easy way. I guess the Zonai don't believe in roofs. Maybe a roof killed their family. But it's fast for us, so I don't know why I'm complaining. What we're going to do is do a turn wind bomb facing to the east and turning to the left. And what that's going to do, ideally, is give us enough distance to go all the way to the maze. But sometimes you land a bit short, and it's best to land here and do a turn wind bomb going the rest of the way. And once we reach the maze, we're going to do a mid-air wind bomb to reach the end. You could land on the rocks below to make it a bit more safe if you're not comfortable with mid-airs, but this is definitely quicker. And the solution to this maze is to head over to this little C-shaped spot in the maze and simply shield surf down into the area and then turn yourself around to face the correct direction. And this one text box here is why we save so much time in English. In French, Italian, German, Japanese, all the other ones, they for some reason give you a second text box explaining further the maze, but English just gives you one. So here is our final blessing shrine. It works just like the others, so not really much to say about this one. But the thing we should talk about is how we're going to get to the end of the run. Namely, how we're going to get into Korok Forest to claim the Master Sword. And the way we're going to do that is with a pretty tricky stasis bounce, which I found works pretty well from this location. Normally what you would do is do a BLSS all the way and approach the forest from the north, but if you line it up just perfectly, you can enter from the west side of the forest and clear the fog barrier. If the angle I approach the forest is a bit off, I will likely void immediately. Doing so would send me all the way back to the maze, and I don't have many backup amiibo to do the stasis bounce again. So let's not fail this, please. After I gain control again, I'm going to have to solve the maze backwards to leave. Just kidding, the front gate opens after you beat the shrine because the Zonai are stupid. Fools. To get in position, I run up these steps and do a wind bomb to the south. That will put me in position to do the stasis bounce. And at this part, I'm going to be using a non-Guardian amiibo because I only own 2. Sorry, but this amiibo also spawns a metal chest, which is going to help me position the wooden box in a spot that I want it to be in. So facing pretty much due southeast, we're going to now load up the box with stasis. And do the same thing of facing to the left, and then try to do a shield jump on the 5th fast ding, and then another shield jump. And I have to be careful here to pull the glider as quickly as possible, because if you lose any height at all, you won't be able to clear these mountains. But as you can see, the speed is very high, and as we enter the forest, the fog isn't able to keep up with us. As we kind of deal with the world loads in the game trying to catch up to you, what ends up happening is we get to the forest so quickly, the KO Rug shrine isn't able to load in at all. So we're able to get another unloaded shrine and save a bit of time over doing it normally. You're probably wondering if having the shrine unloaded is common or not. I haven't done tons of these runs on this patch, so I don't have a lot of data to report. But I will say confidently that this is the only time I've seen KO Rug unloaded, so I'm happy I was able to include it in this video. We do just one more wind bomb, and it being the square wind bomb variety, and send us just below the awning and toward the final monk. And this being our last shrine, we have one more task to do, and that's to talk to a goddess statue and turn in all of our spirit orbs. Luckily for us, and I guess it's just part of the casual experience of this game, and you're looking to get the 13 hearts needed to pull the Master Sword, there is a convenient goddess statue inside the Deku Tree. I can't even imagine what we would do here if there wasn't a statue. I guess go to Death Mountain and turn in spirit orbs at Goron City, then launch our way to the forest? Hey, that sounds terrible. Let's not think about it. We're going to climb up this route and try to whistle sprint our way over to conserve stamina. And then we're going to enter the mouth and head over to this shop. And now it's a matter of simply mashing the A button until we get all of our spirit orbs spent and get 13 heart containers. So while we wait for Link to bulk up, let's talk about some of the glitches that you can do to get the Master Sword early. Back several years ago, the best way to get there was by doing some kind of glitch in Hateno called Apparatus Glitch, then using Apparatus Glitch to do some kind of ROM warp that had the game kind of momentarily lose your coordinates in the game, which allowed you to pull the Master Sword without having to do any trials or get any hearts or anything. It was kind of a laborious speedrun, and it kind of traversed too much of the map, and no one really had much interest in it, which is sort of why Master Sword Restricted continued to exist. The idea of doing kind of a mini shrine rush is kind of fun to people, and it allows you to do more of the game, and it has a lot more tricks. So for that reason, the category kind of survived. And then early Master Sword kind of evolved a bit when someone found out that all you had to do was put a campfire next to the Master Sword, wait on a day, tilt the camera looking up at the sky, and then just mash the A button. Which, you know, obviously is pretty cool and pretty funny that it works, but it's not terribly interesting to watch either, because that speedrun ends up just being do plateau, go to the forest, do the trick, GG. So this category of Master Sword Restricted still kind of has a little bit of life left in it, because there are kind of some fun routing changes and ideas that you can come up with, and it's kind of a good way to get into the game and speedrunning the game because it involves doing a lot of tough tricks. Here I try to shield surf down the route and hop toward the Master Sword to save a small amount of time. Next we have a few cutscenes to skip before we start pulling the Master Sword for real. Whee! And once the Deku Tree is done talking to us, we can finish this run off. It's been a wild ride trying to put these strats together, and I think there can be more micro-optimizations in the future. I want to thank the Breath of the Wild community for helping come up with all these strats over the years, as no one person can do all this alone. So there you go, the last step into the run is just to hold down the A button and pull the Master Sword, and time ends when the sword actually leaves the pedestal. And there we have it, a final time of 1:18:35. So if you've enjoyed this speedrun and you've enjoyed this commentary, I hope that you'll subscribe to my channel and come find me live on YouTube and Twitch, and hopefully I'll see you around another time. And if you like this video, you might enjoy some of my other ones, so be sure to check those out. Thanks for watching, guys.